Welcome to the Midnight Stories Club. Here, we don't chase sleep, we chase shadows. Each night, a tale is shared. Each tale darker than the last. Sit back. Light fades. The stories begin. Nocturnal murmurs never troubled me. The groans of timber settling, the sigh of wind through eaves, these were merely the house breathing, familiar and benign. That comfortable certainty dissolved weeks after the dust settled from renovating the old family stead, a place steeped in the quiet history of my grandparents. It's a modest, single-story structure, yet rambling enough that solitude felt expansive within its walls. I'd orchestrated a transformation. Walls crumbled, the living space unfurled. Arteries of plumbing and wire were renewed. Months of clamor and chaos yielded a result that filled me with a quiet, satisfying pride. Then the subtle disturbances began. Order is something I cultivate, a necessity in the spaces I inhabit. One evening, midnight having chimed implicitly on the clock of my consciousness, I concluded my nightly television ritual. A meticulous sequence followed. Extinguishing lights, a tactile confirmation of locked doors, the satisfying thud of portals secured against the night. My bedroom lies down a short corridor, adjacent to the bathroom and a small, seldom used guest room. Its door, by habit and preference, remains shut. That night, the memory is crystalline. I pressed it closed, felt the distinct click of the latch engaging. Then, into my own room, door secured. Sleep claimed me. Around the deep night hour of 3, nature called. Silence reigned. The hallway lay draped in shadow, save for the faint beacon of a nightlight humming softly in the bathroom recess, a familiar guide. Stepping into the passage, my gaze snagged on something discordant, a sliver of luminescence bleeding from the guest room threshold. I froze. That door stood agape. A dull, insistent pressure bloomed in my chest. I closed it. The certainty was absolute. My hand found a wall switch, flooding the corridor in stark light, confirming the impossible. The guest room door was undeniably open. Nothing else appeared disturbed. A cautious inspection revealed only an unoccupied room, floor bare, the air still, a perfectly ordinary vacant space. A shrug, a mental grasp for reason. Houses settle, warp, breathe. Perhaps the latch hadn't fully caught. I pushed the door firmly shut, listened for the definitive click, and retreated to bed, a residue of unease clinging to my thoughts. A few nights drifted past. The incident repeated. This time, no sliver of doubt remained. I had felt a mechanism catch, heard its tiny mechanical pronouncement. Yet, rising for water near to, I found the same door swung open. My heart commenced a frantic drumming against my ribs as I approached. I lingered in the hallway, a full minute perhaps, staring into the unreadable darkness beyond the frame, straining to detect breath or movement. Silence answered, thick and watchful. A knot of tension tightened low in my gut. Paranoia, I chided myself. I closed the door again, jiggled the handle, verifying its steadfastness. Sleep, however, proved elusive, my mind replaying the discovery. The open door, a silent question mark in the dark. Daylight banished the spectral unease. Sunlight streamed through the panes, rendering the rooms familiar, solid. I examined the door's hardware. No expert. I saw nothing amiss. No wobble in the hinges, no obvious misalignment. I summoned Elias, the carpenter whose hands had fitted the doors during the renovation. He arrived the next day, tools glinting, moving with quiet competence. He measured, tightened, tested. His verdict was unequivocal. The door was perfectly hung, the hinges sound, the latch secure. It did not yield without deliberate effort. He departed, leaving me feeling faintly ridiculous, grasping at straws of forgotten details or sleep-muddled actions. The third time pierced deeper. It was 3:15 a.m. Not only the guest room door, but the bathroom door beside it now stood ajar, both slightly open, as if someone had passed between them. My throat constricted. Breath came short and fast. A frantic tour confirmed all windows latched, external doors bolted. No forced entry, nothing stolen. Seeking composure, I splashed frigid water on my face, the shock momentarily steadying. My reflection stared back, wide-eyed, questioning my sanity. I returned to the hallway, carefully shut both doors, listening intently to the clicks. Sleep, when it finally came hours later, was shallow, punctuated by phantom creaks that jerked me upright, listening, every nerve taut. A week later, the sounds began, not nightly, but with unnerving frequency. Lying in the pre-sleep quiet, a soft tapping would emerge, seeming to emanate from my bedroom door. Gentle, insistent, like fingertips exploring the wood grain. Initially, I blamed the air system, a rattling pipe. But rising, pressing my ear to the panel, the tapping would cease instantly. Sometimes in its place, a faint, almost imperceptible vibration hummed through the wood. A brief tremor, there and gone. My scalp would prickle, a hot flush of adrenaline surging through me. Barefoot on the cool floor, hard hammering, I'd wrenched the door open, hoping to confront something. Always. The hallway stretched empty and silent. Lights blazing revealed nothing disturbed. No trace. Just vacant space. One night I laid a trap of wakefulness. Hallway dark, television muted, I waited in the living room's dim glow. The guest room door was shut, latched, and this time, locked from within its empty space. Around 2:30 a.m., a faint, dry creak whispered from the corridor. It wasn't loud, but it jolted me. I silenced the TV entirely, listening. The sound seemed localized near the hallway bend. Rising with practiced stealth, I edged forward, breath held tight, pulse thudding in my ears. Peering around the corner, I stopped dead. The guest room door remained closed, but the handle, it shifted. A slight downward tremor, not a full turn, but an undeniable jiggle, as if touched by an unseen hand. My chest tightened, stealing my breath, then stillness. I stared, rigid, for long moments. Nothing. Stepping forward, I seized the handle, pulling the door open swiftly. Emptiness greeted me. My pulse raced. A sheen of sweat slicked my forehead. Inside, the lamp cast stark shadows. Closet empty. Windows secure. The air hung heavy, tinged with the lingering ghost of old paint from the renovation. I stood there, the only sound my own ragged breathing. Eventually, lamp extinguished, I retreated, closing the door behind me. Back in the living room, I noticed the tremor in my hands, the dryness in my mouth. Water from the fridge did little to quell the internal shaking. Sleep was a distant shore that night. The following day became an exercise in obsessive scrutiny. Flashlight in hand, I examined every millimeter of that door. Hinges tight, wood uncracked, the latch clicked, held firm. Frame, floor, threshold, no warping, no subtle misalignment. I produced a level. Everything plumb. The bathroom door, others throughout the house, received the same futile inspection. I felt foolish. A man armed with tools and a haunted expression battling shadows. Half convinced some lingering effect of the construction was responsible, yet finding no physical evidence, left me adrift. Nightfall now brought a heightened sense of siege. Lying in bed, attempting to read, gentle knocks would sometimes sound against the hallway walls. Not forceful, but rhythmic, impossible to ignore. I'd lower the book. Hello? The silence that answered felt vast, expectant. Occasionally, a faint scuffling followed, like a palm dragged lightly across drywall. Then, profound stillness, scalp tingling, mouth parched, a subtle tremor running through my limbs. I'd rise. Peeking into the hall sometimes revealed nothing amiss. Other times, a door I knew I'd secured stood slightly ajar. A moment of paralysis would grip me, advance or retreat. Invariably, propelled by a mixture of fear and the need to know, I'd investigate. Slow steps, flipping switches, illuminating empty spaces. The instant I moved to confront the source, the sounds vanished. After one particularly nerve-shredding night, I consulted an old acquaintance, formerly in security. Had I seen footprints? An alarm system? I recounted the fenced perimeter, the secure locks, the motion-activated exterior lights. No uninvited guest could approach undetected. His suggestion was pragmatic. Indoor cameras, to catch an intruder, or simply document the phenomenon. The logic was sound. I acquired a pair, small eyes connecting to my phone, positioning them to surveil the hallway, focused on the guest room and bathroom doors, with another watching the living area. The first night under surveillance offered a fragile sense of control. The cameras winking LEDs, small points of vigilance in the dark. Hallway light off, doors meticulously closed and latched. I settled into bed, phone beside me, anticipating motion alerts. Around 2, a faint click, followed by a soft groan of wood, drifted from the corridor. My stomach clenched. I snatched a phone. No alert. I accessed the live feed. The cameras showed only the still, empty hallway. Nothing stirred within their electronic gaze. Frowning, I listened again. Silence. Cautiously I rose, eased my door open. The bathroom door was cracked open a mere inch. The guest room door remained shut. The camera, aimed directly at this area, had registered nothing. Stepping forward, phone light cutting the gloom. I confirmed the slight opening, the glint of bathroom tile beyond. Entering the hallway, I checked the camera again. Feed active, functional, yet inexplicably blind. I pushed bathroom door fully open, dark, vacant. A chill traced its way down my spine as I peered behind the shower curtain, half expecting a lurking presence. Nothing. Legs unsteady, jaw tight. I retreated, closing the door firmly, adjusting the camera's angle slightly. Sleep remained a fugitive. The ensuing days solidified the pattern. Doors unlatching themselves in the dead hours. Soft knocks, gentle taps, that disturbing faint vibration felt through the wood. When I dared press my ear against it. Each attempt to capture definitive proof failed. The cameras diligently recorded my own nocturnal wanderings. Opening doors, sweeping flashlight beams, but never the initial act, the autonomous movement itself. It was maddening. I verified settings, tested motion detection, during daylight hours. They functioned flawlessly. Yet, come nightfall, these subtle events slipped past their digital scrutiny. I began to recognize the temporal signature, almost invariably between 2 and 3:30 in the morning. Daylight hours were utterly mundane. Doors stayed put. The house remained silent. If it were atmospheric pressure, temperature shifts, humidity, why the nocturnal consistency? Why not during the sweltering afternoons? The thought of calling Elias again surfaced and sank. His answer would be the same. This wasn't mechanical failure. I exist now in a state of weary vigilance. Sleep is attempted, but any creak, any tap jolts me awake, adrenaline surging. My muscles tense, my heart pounds its familiar frantic rhythm as I walk that hallway corridor. Sometimes the tapping is so faint, I question my own senses. Other times, its clarity is undeniable. No intruder has ever been glimpsed, no sign of violation found. Morning arrives, erasing the night's anomalies, leaving only the memory and the unsettling evidence of doors found open. Explaining this is fraught. Skepticism, polite disbelief, suggestions of paranoia. I've encountered them all, but the experience is irrefutably mine. Alone in this house, I am the sole witness, hyper-aware now of every click and latch. I've tested, replaced, reinforced, the phenomena persist. Logic offers no foothold. Too many nights have been spent chasing proof, only to grasp at shadows. It's real, yet ephemeral. That faint vibration against my ear, like a gentle pressure from the other side, vanishing the instant the barrier is breached, remains the most unnerving element. Is it fallout from the renovation? Some strange resonance in the new materials settling in the nocturnal cool? A bizarre structural quirk? Ilias, the craftsman, insists the doors are sound. His certainty leaves me suspended between the rationale and the inexplicable. All I know is the persistence of it, the gnawing unease it breeds. Each night, I dread that moment of waking, the potential discovery of another open door mocking my efforts to secure my space. I cling to the hope of a mundane explanation, a minuscule flaw overlooked. Perhaps the air conditioning creates some subtle pressure differential. But the memory of the latch clicking firmly refutes such easy answers. The house is solid, renewed, and it is driving me towards some precipice of sanity. For now, I endure. Sweaty palms still accompany my nightly patrols. Curiosity and fear remain locked in a struggle, compelling me to check, to confront the emptiness behind doors that should be sealed. I find nothing but vacant rooms. That is my current reality. Locking, checking, watching, only to find them breached by an unseen hand between 2 and 3 in the morning. Hearing the taps, feeling the vibrations, seeing nothing. It is profoundly unsettling, inexplicable, yet undeniably real. And with every occurrence, the same cold dread washes over me. The fear that one night, pulling open a familiar door, I won't find emptiness staring back. Until then, I am caught in a cycle. Nighttime tension, morning relief, and the pervasive dread that descends with the setting sun, waiting for the taps, the clicks, the whisper of open doors that refuse to stay closed. The instant my fingers brushed against the journal's brittle cover, a deeper knowing surfaced. This derelict motor lodge, the Stillwater Lodge, should have remained a blur in my rearview mirror. But a treacherous curiosity, that old siren song, had already taken hold. By the time the chilling weight of my arrow settled upon me, the lock had already clicked shut, metaphorically, and soon, literally. It was meant to be transient, a mere pause in the relentless westward migration towards a promised life in California. The Stillwater Lodge presented itself not as a haven, but as a scar on the edge of the highway. 2 floors of peeling paint and neglected balconies, whispering tales of decay likely dating back decades. Its allure was simple: affordability and proximity to exhaustion. I wheeled into the sparsely populated lot as twilight bled across the sky, the air thick with the ghosts of forgotten journeys. Inside, the lobby exhaled a miasma of ancient cigarette smoke, poorly masked by cloying chemical sweetness. Behind the counter, a woman named Agnes, unnervingly still, with clouded eyes that seemed fixed on a point beyond the room, offered a faint, unsettling hum instead of a greeting. She slid the key to room 4 across the worn laminate, her movements languid, almost disconnected. "Checkout is 11, she murmured, her voice thin as dust motes dancing in the stale air. A tremor, almost imperceptible, passed through her hand as she relinquished the key. Her gaze snagged on the number 4 for a fraction too long. Blinded by highway hypnosis and the grit of miles behind my eyelids, I registered none of it. Sleep was the only destination I craved. Room 4 was a study in faded glory. Wallpaper patterned with indeterminate blooms that seemed to wilt before my eyes, a bed that sighed profoundly under the slightest pressure, a television whose convex screen reflected a distorted, funhouse version of the room. Yet, a perfunctory cleanliness prevailed, and the shower, surprisingly, possessed an almost violent pressure. Just as a fragile hope for decent rest began to germinate, my gaze caught it. A corner, dark against the dusty floorboards, protruding from beneath the bed's valance. Detritus from a previous occupant, surely. Crouching, my fingers met not trash, but the textured spine of a book. A journal, its leather cover rubbed smooth and yielding like old skin. Opening it was the true point of no return. I see that now with crystalline clarity. Then, it felt innocuous, a forgotten repository of travelogue banalities or perhaps tedious business reflections. Indeed, the initial pages confirmed this suspicion. Prosaic notes on meetings, complaints about unseasonal rain. Standard fare, but then, subtly at first, the narrative warped. The script grew agitated, lines slanting wildly, the ink seeming to bleed urgency. "This place is wrong," one entry jaggedly proclaimed. "The angles. They aren't true when I turn my back. And the sounds in the deep night. Dear God, the sounds." An involuntary shiver traced its path down my spine. Yet the pages turned as if guided by an unseen hand. The subsequent entry plunged deeper into paranoia. Tried a door today, bolted. Not by me, I swear it. Forced it open finally, and the corridor, it wasn't the one I knew. It stretched, impossibly elongated, flanked by countless identical doors. This cannot be. This place isn't real. My own hands had begun to tremble, mirroring the frantic strokes on the page. Each entry descended further into a chilling abyss. The author chronicled shadows detaching themselves from corners, susurrations that seemed to emanate from within the plaster itself, and a nightly visitor. A presence that materialized beside the bed, simply watching. The final words were scrawled with a desperate fading hand, barely decipherable. Reader, flee. Flee now, while you still can, before the lodge claims you, like me, like all of us. I snap the journal shut, my pulse a frantic drum against my ribs. A hoax? An elaborate, cruel prank designed to terrify the next weary traveler? Yet, as I sat there, the very atmosphere of room 4 seemed to congeal, growing colder, the shadows pooling in the corners, acquiring a sudden, unnerving depth. Prank or not, departure felt imperative. I seized my luggage, lunged for the door, twisted the knob, and met solid, unyielding resistance. I threw my weight against it, rattling the frame, but it felt fused, welded to its jamb. Panic, cold and sharp, began its insidious crawl. The window, my next thought, refused to yield. The sash seemingly painted shut decades ago. It was then, peering through the grimy glass, that the true horror began to bloom. The parking lot, nearly vacant upon my arrival mere hours before, was now densely packed. Cars, spectral under the moonlight, represented every era from the mid-century onwards, each draped in a thick shroud of dust, looking less parked than interred. Recoiling from the window, my thoughts fragmented. Hallucination? The product of profound fatigue? I squeezed my eyes shut, drawing a ragged breath, anchoring myself to the ritual of counting. Everything will reset when I reach 10. 1, 2, 3. A sound emerged, faint but distinct, a dry, rhythmic scratching from within the walls. 4, 5, 6. Was the ceiling imperceptibly lower? The walls closing in? 7, 8, 9. The scratching intensified, now interwoven with whispers, sibilant and unintelligible, yet disturbingly familiar. 10. I opened my eyes. The room's dimensions remained, yet the quality of the space had altered. The air felt viscous, charged with a static hum that raised the hairs on my arms. And the door stood slightly ajar, revealing not the dingy corridor I expected, but a hallway, stretching into an impossible, receding infinity. Every fiber of my being screamed caution, urging me to retreat, to barricade myself and await the dawn, convinced this phantasmagoria would dissolve with the light. But the whispers were coiling around me now, insinuating themselves into my thoughts, and the shadows seemed to reach. Staying was unthinkable. I pushed the door wider and stepped across the threshold. It was like plunging into another dimension. The threadbare carpet and peeling paint vanished, supplanted by lustrous dark wood underfoot and walls adorned with intricate damask paper that shimmered subtly in the low ambient light. Doors, identical and imposing, marched away in both directions, an endless colonnade. I began to walk, propelled by the desperate need for stairs, an exit, the lobby, anything familiar. But the corridor offered no egress, no variation, only the relentless repetition of doors. Time lost all meaning in that passage. Minutes bled into hours, or perhaps days. Occasionally, muffled sounds seeped from behind the closed doors. Fragments of conversations, stifled weeping. Once, chillingly, I heard a distinct echo of my own laughter, torn from a long-forgotten moment. Exhausted, teetering on the brink of psychic collapse, I stopped before a door indistinguishable from the rest. Some intuition, Perhaps a nascent recognition guided my hand. The knob turned without resistance. Inside was not room for. It was my childhood bedroom, rendered with impossible fidelity. Toys from a bygone era lay scattered. Posters of adolescent idols adorned the walls. Seated on the edge of the familiar bed was a younger version of myself, perhaps 10 years old, looking up with a smile that held no warmth, only an unsettling vacancy. "You took your time," she said, her voice echoing as if across a vast distance. "We've been waiting." I recoiled, shaking my head, the denial a silent scream in my throat. Not real. Cannot be real. I spun, seeking the hallway's escape, but it had dissolved. In its place stood another room, my college dormitory, stark and familiar. Another me sat there, older now, hunched over a textbook. "Surely you recall." This iteration inquired, her tone laced with a weary patience. Checking in, just as we all did. Whirling again, I found only more rooms, each a perfectly preserved diorama of my past. My first cramped apartment, the sterile landscape of a former office, transient lodgings from forgotten trips, and in each, a phantom self, watching me with identical sorrowful eyes. "Leaving isn't an option," they chorused, a multitude of my own voices blending into one haunting drone. "None of us ever leave. This is our place now." Something fractured within me then, not memories returning, but being forcibly reinstalled, overwriting the present. Countless arrivals at the Stillwater Lodge, the discovery of the journal, the futile attempts at flight, the inevitable return, the cross-country drive, the new job, illusions fading now like breath on cold glass. I had never left. I had always been here, caught in this temporal eddy, doomed to repeat the nightmare. I crumpled to my knees as the crushing weight of this reality settled. The lodge itself seemed to sigh around me. The phantom rooms dissolved like smoke, and I was back in room 4. It was precisely as I'd first found it, down to the corner of the worn journal peeking from beneath the bed. With hands that felt both mine and not mine, I retrieved it, opening it to the final, heavily inscribed page. There, penned in a script I recognized with a sickening lurch as my own, was the familiar warning. "Reader, flee. Flee now, while you still can, before the lodge claims you like me, like all of us." I carefully replaced the journal in its hiding place. Then, I sat on the edge of the sagging bed and waited. Soon, knuckles would rap against the door. A new traveler, weary and seeking refuge, would check into room 4. The cycle, patient and inexorable, would turn once more. Because at the Stillwater Lodge, arrival is permitted, even encouraged. Departure, however, is not part of the design. 3 days now, I've breathed this lake air. Julian, they call me, the man come chasing whispers. Legends drew me, the kind that fester around stagnant water, tales the local librarian recounted with a shiver. Peculiar sightings along this very shore. I inhabit a cramped box of wood clinging precariously near the water's edge, separated from the dark expanse by only a membrane of slick mud and jagged stones. My worldly goods amounted to little. A scarred wooden table, a protesting folding chair, a carton brimming with notebooks, and a reassuringly heavy torch. My cot found its place in the corner, nestled by the sole window, a portal offering nightly views of the lake's inscrutable surface. Under the moon, it feigned flatness, yet the water itself held a darkness deeper than mere night, an opacity that swallowed light. Town advice cautioned against lingering past midnight. I filed it away with the folklore. I sought substance, the verifiable grit beneath the ghost tales. The inaugural night found me stationed by the glass, scrutinizing the water. No breeze stirred. The lake lay inert, yet refused the sky's reflection with the clarity of honest water. Luna's visage swam upon it, warped and impure, like gazing through soiled glass. My torch beam sliced the dark, illuminating a fleeting circle before being absorbed. Nothing stirred. As midnight approached, a distinct chill permeated the thin walls, prompting me to activate the small electric heater I'd foresightedly included. Sleep claimed me on the cot, yielding only to sunrise. An unremarkable dawn. I scratched observations into a notebook, brewed coffee on the portable stove, consumed cold beans from a tin. The day passed in circumnavigating the shore, examining the terrain. The ground felt persistently damp, spongy beneath my boots despite the lack of recent rain. No animal spoor marked the mud, only clusters of small, unidentifiable apertures poking the surface. My plan solidified. Borrowed a neighbor's rowboat, venture to the lake's heart. Perhaps looking directly down would reveal what hid beneath that deceptive skin. A simple reconnaissance, I told myself then. Routine field work. Night 2, I resumed my vigil at the window pane. Notebook poised, torch within reach. The heater hummed its low thrum against the encroaching cold. Silence pressed in, not empty but dense, suffocating. I watched the clock on my phone tick towards the witching hour. Precisely at 12:04, the lake's surface subtly shifted. The moon remained a bright coin overhead, its light potent enough for reflection, yet the image cast upon the water now fractured into blots and configurations alien to the heavens. Leaning closer, breath fogging the glass, I discerned shapes coalescing. A face, perhaps too, smeared across the water's film. They didn't ripple naturally. They twitched, pulsed, expanding and contracting. I rubbed my eyes, but the apparitions held. They were starkly present, as if transparencies had been submerged just below the surface. Torch in hand, I ventured outside, navigating the treacherous, slick ground with care. At the water's margin, I directed the beam onto the lake. The light struck the surface, causing the faces to waver, yet they endured. With a low, grating protest, the rowboat slid from the mud into the water. I clambered in, rowing with deliberate slowness. The air hung utterly still. The small craft glided easily. My torchlight remained fixed on the water ahead. 10 feet from shore, perhaps, the faces reappeared, drifting beneath my hull, pallid and distorted. I searched their features for any echo of my own reflection. There was none. These visages wore expressions I couldn't place, eyes wide with a silent tension, mouths opening and closing in a slow, soundless rhythm. Leaning over the gunwale, torch held low, I peered down. But the water's profound darkness yielded nothing below. Then a distinct tap resonated from beneath the boat, not the bump of a curious fish. This felt heavier, a solid, dull thud against the wood. I froze. My gaze swept the placid surroundings. The surface remained unbroken, yet something unseen was making contact from the depths. Another thud, followed by a sliding sensation along the hull's length. My hands, suddenly slick, tightened on the oars. I began rowing back towards land, my movements jerky despite my efforts at control. Breath came short, heart hammering against my ribs. I fought the urge to lean too far, to betray my fear with the noise. The instant the hull scraped the shore mud, I vaulted out, dragging the boat further onto solid ground, relief washing over me in a dizzying wave. Standing there, forcing air through my nose, attempting to quell the frantic pulse in my wrists, I swept the torchlight over the water again. The faces had vanished. The lake looked merely still. A faint dripping sound broke the silence. Looking down, I saw my boot sinking slightly into the mire. The air hung thick with a stale, vegetal odor. I hauled the boat higher, ensuring it wouldn't drift free, then turned back towards the house, torch beam dancing ahead to avoid the mud's hidden hollows. Pushing open the door, a wrongness immediately registered. The floorboards were damp. I distinctly recalled locking the door, securing the windows. A quick inspection revealed no obvious leaks. Then I saw them. Footprints. Bare footprints, roughly my own size, perhaps a fraction wider, tracked water across the room. They originated near the door, traversed the space, and terminated abruptly beside my cot. A frantic scan confirmed the house was otherwise empty. Under the bed, behind the table, inside the shallow closet, nothing. Only me. My pulse still a frantic drum against the silence. The prints glistened, freshly made. Tiny rivulets had trickled from them. Touching the floor, the moisture felt unnaturally cold, clinging. Unease tightened its grip. My sole defenses, the torch and a small pocket knife. I stood utterly still, straining my ears. A faint humming materialized, seeming to vibrate in the air itself. Low, dissonant, sluggishly paced. Following the sound led me to the corner opposite my bed. Nothing occupied the space but bare wall, yet the humming seemed to emanate from within the room, perhaps the wall itself. I cycled the torch off, then on, seeking anomalies revealed by shifting light. Only empty wood met my gaze. The humming persisted, morphing into something akin to a lullaby, yet devoid of recognizable melody, its pitch rising and falling unpredictably. Stepping closer, the sound intensified, resolving into what might be whispering just behind the timber. Pressing my ear flat against the cool wood, I caught a faint, dry scraping. I recoiled instinctively. The door remained locked, the windows shut fast. I touched the footprints again. The chill seemed to seep into my fingertips. An impulse seized me. Check outside. Perhaps fresh tracks led away. Stepping onto the muddy threshold, I swept a torchlight across the ground. Nothing. No prints marked the earth around the house. My gaze traveled towards the lake. Impassive darkness. Listening intently, the humming was fainter out here. Its source was definitively inside. Re-entering, I moved with exaggerated quiet, my chest constricted. Logic offered possibilities. Seepage beneath the walls. Moisture tracked in on my own boots. But my boots sat on the mat where I'd left them, damp but not soaked. And these prints possessed a distinct morphology. Bare feet, sans shoes. Kneeling, I measured one against my hand, wider than my foot. The toes appeared blunt, crudely formed. The stride was shorter than my own. The humming dissolved into a low susurrus, indistinct, like a series of faint, drawn-out breaths. Back pressed against the front door, striving to keep the entire small room within my field of vision, My eye caught movement. A single droplet of water detached itself from the ceiling, falling silently onto my table. I snapped the torch beam upwards. Plain wooden planks stared back, dry, unstained. As I watched, another bead of moisture seemed to coalesce from nothing, swelled, and plummeted to the floor. Wiping it with my sleeve, the scent confirmed its origin. The lake, stale and muddy. My stomach clenched. The urge to flee warred with the practicalities. Nowhere to go tonight. The nearest lodging mile is distant, no vehicle. Taking a ragged breath, I resolved to remain vigilant. I sat on the cot, torch clutched tight. Killing the heater plunged the room into a deeper cold. My body began to tremble uncontrollably. The whispering ceased after a time, leaving only silence, yet sleep remained elusive. My gaze darted constantly, probing shadows, illuminating walls and floor. The footprints slowly evaporated, leaving faint, ghostly outlines. My heart refused to settle. I waited for dawn, succumbing only to brief, shallow snatches of sleep, each time jolted awake by phantom trickling sounds, the whisper of water. Morning brought weak light and little comfort. I forced down coffee, a cold meal tasting of ash. Appetite had fled. Methodically, I documented the previous night, the faces shimmering beneath the water, the inexplicable footprints, the disembodied humming. I noted the time. Midnight precisely. Resolve hardened. I would face the darkness again tonight, but armed differently. A small mirror positioned by the window, my phone set to record video. If the faces manifested, I would capture proof. The day was spent tracing the lake's perimeter once more, clad in boots and rain gear. The muddy bank yielded nothing. No bird song broke the quiet. No fish disturbed the surface. The water itself seemed unnaturally viscous. Prodding it with a stick brought the wood out coated in a thin, repulsive slime that I wiped clean on the damp grass. I discovered rocks worn into peculiar contours, but little else. Towards evening, I encountered a neighbor who'd lent me the boat. He inquired obliquely if I'd witnessed anything untoward. I admitted to restless nights. He merely nodded, muttering something about the house's transient occupants. My attempts to press him for details were met with a shrug and a hasty retreat towards his chores. Returning before sundown, I meticulously arranged my setup. The phone secured on a miniature tripod near the window. The mirror, angled on the sill to reflect the lake's surface towards the lens and my peripheral vision. I tested the camera, ensuring focus. Flashlight and knife lay ready on the table. This time I not only locked the door but double-checked it, then wedged the chair firmly beneath the knob. Boots placed near the cot. Another cold tin of beans washed down with water. Tension coiled in my shoulders, a physical ache. My hands felt icy. I rubbed them together incessantly. Midnight arrived like a hell breath. Through the window, I watched the moonlit lake. Calm surface, yet a lunar reflection remained that same distorted smear. Then, a subtle flux. The reflection elongated, splintered, resolving into multiple shapes. I adjusted the camera, confirming it recorded. The faces materialized again, more numerous this time, drifting across the reflected water. Their eyes, I could see them now, seemed to gaze forward, searching. A prickling sensation ran up my arms. Simultaneously, a faint tapping began against the window glass. A swift internal scan revealed nothing amiss within the room. Steeling myself, I stepped outside, hugging the doorway. Torchlight stabbed towards the lake. The faces were undeniably there, visible to the naked eye now, shifting beneath the surface tension. Then, a faint scratching sound emanated from beneath a rowboat still beached nearby. Crouching, I peered under its hull. Only a damp patch of mud greeted my light. As I straightened, keeping the torch beam steady, something brushed my ankle. I leaped back, light spearing downwards. Nothing but a small spreading puddle of water. My trouser leg felt damp. An odd pressure lingered, like an invisible current swirling around my foot, though nothing was visible. Heart pounding, I scrambled back inside, slamming the door. A glance at the phone confirmed it was still recording. My breathing came in ragged gasps. Calm felt impossibly distant. The humming returned, this time seemingly pressed against the window glass. The same broken tune. I backed against the opposite wall, torch beam fixed on the pane. The glass threw back my own reflection, the dim room behind me. No one else shared the space. I doused the torch momentarily, eyes straining into the exterior darkness for any telltale luminescence. Nothing. Light back on. The humming abruptly ceased. Automatically, I checked the floor. A fresh set of wet footprints stained the boards near the wall where the humming had originated the previous night. They described a small, tight circle, then simply vanished mid-step. Exhaustion warred with hypervigilance. My head throbbed. Again, I endured until morning. First light revealed the phone's recording. Playback confirmed it. The faces swam in the reflected moonlight, faint but undeniable. The audio captured the eerie humming, punctuated by my own audibly trembling voice narrating the events. Evidence. Tangible, yet baffling. What purpose did it serve? The footprints had dried, leaving no trace. The humming remained nocturnal. The lake under the sun's glare looked merely like water. Departure beckoned, yet the investigator in me craved more definitive proof. Water samples, recording from the boat itself, the memory of the thudding beneath the hull, the unseen touch, sent a wave of cold dread through my chest. That stale, watery smell seemed embedded in the very fabric of the house, persisting even with the window thrown wide. I made my choice. One more night. I attempted rest during the daylight hours, lying on the cot, eyes shut tight. Sleep offered no refuge, only faint, persistent watery sounds accompanying each drift towards unconsciousness. By late afternoon, I was a bundle of frayed nerves, breathing shallowly, hands trembling too much to hold a pen steady. Another circuit of the lake, hoping the air might clear my head. Still the same unnerving emptiness, no wildlife, no human presence, just the brooding water and the sucking mud. Returning, I repeated the ritual. Torch, knife, camera, mirror. The door locked and barricaded. Blocking the window felt unwise. I needed to see. Midnight. The faces swam into view, sharper now, clearer than before. I perceived distinct movement in the submerged eyes, their mouths opening and closing, with silent insistence. A low vibration began underfoot, traveling through the floorboards. I swept the torch beam across the walls. The humming started again, louder this time, jarringly off-key. My grip tightened on the knife hilt. I took a hesitant step towards the wall where the sound seemed strongest. It swelled, feeling unnervingly close as if whispered directly into my ear. I thrust the knife tentatively into the empty air before me. It met no resistance. The sound seemed to pass through the room, a palpable wave. My heart hammered violently, sweat slicked my palms. The door rattled faintly in its frame. Adrenaline surged. I wrenched it open, projecting the torch beam into the night. Nothing. Only darkness stared back. Closing it again, leaning heavily against the wood, I gasped for air, realizing my shirt clung damply with sweat. The humming faded, replaced by a slow, deliberate dripping sound near the window. Turning, I saw a single fat drop of water tracing a path down the inside of the glass. I reached out, touched it. Ice cold, it carried the unmistakable odor of the lake. I snatched my hand back as if burned. The camera's red light glowed steadily. It was still recording. Sinking onto the cot, I gathered the torch and knife into my lap. A trembling sentinel waiting once more for the distant promise of sunrise. The woods were my oldest solace, whispering secrets only solitude could decipher. But that day, as twilight bled across the canopy, staining the leaves with bruised light, my path deviated into the unknown. Deep within a forgotten fold of the forest, where the air tasted of loam and time itself seemed to rot, I unearthed the relic. One careless caress, Ilara and I roused a slumbering malice, a primordial hunger awaiting a fool's touch, mine. Dawn broke cool and sharp. I'd packed light, almonds, water, a dog-eared guide to woodland whispers. The familiar trail crunched agreeably underfoot, autumn's breath crisp against my skin. Yet, an insistence, a magnetic pull towards the forest's deeper, untrodden heart, guided my steps beyond the known map. Hours bled into one another. The path dissolved, surrendering to thickets and the debris of forgotten seasons. Arboreal titans clawed at the heavens, their limbs gnarled like arthritic fingers. Silence descended, profound and watchful, punctuated only by the furtive scuttling of unseen life. A tremor, ancient and cautionary, vibrated deep within my bones. Retreat. But the siren song of the unknown, that damnable human itch, propelled me onward. The sun slanted low when a flicker, incongruous amidst the muted palette of decay, snagged my eye. A metallic or mineral gleam. Impelled, I shouldered through grasping thorns that ripped threads and drew blood, emerging into a pocket of stillness. There, bathed in the day's dying amber, stood the locus, a rough-hewn stone plinth ringed by sentinel effigies weathered to near anonymity. Alien glyphs coiled across every surface, their sharpness blurred by ages of wind and rain. My pulse hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs as I crept closer. The air here was different, thick, expectant, raising gooseflesh despite the lingering warmth. Scatterings lay at the altar's base, desiccated petals, molted feathers, and, unsettlingly, the delicate architecture of small skeletons. Gods above, I breathed, kneeling. The sigils etched into the stone pulsed faintly in the waning light, a subtle, hypnotic undulation. I blinked, dismissing it as illusion, yet the ripple persisted, drawing me nearer, overriding the insistent clang of alarm bells in my gut. Thoughtlessly, compulsively, my fingers stretched out, tracing the curve of one arcane mark. Contact. A shockwave detonated through my nerves, fierce and white hot, like plunging my hand into live current. I recoiled, with a choked gasp, staggering backward from the stone. Silence reigned for a heartbeat, broken only by the frantic percussion of my own breath. Then, insidiously, dreadfully, the clearing began to warp. It started as a pressure, an atmospheric weight bearing down. The temperature plummeted. My exhalations plumed white in the suddenly glacial air. The sun's warm kiss vanished, superseded by an eerie, violet-tinged gloaming that seemed to bleed directly from the central stone. And then, it arrived, not seen, but felt, a consciousness vast, ancient and utterly inimical, its sheer wrongness making my psyche flinch. The very woods seemed to inhale, every leaf and shadow suddenly imbued with a sentient hostility. Instinct screamed, "Flee!" I spun, lunging for the tree line, only to collide with an unseen firmness. Like striking solid glass, the impact hurled me back onto the damp earth. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed up my throat. I scrambled upright, eyes darting wildly. The clearing was no longer the same. The surrounding trees stretched skyward, impossibly tall, their upper branches knitting together into a suffocating lattice. And within the deepening gloom, motion. Things that skittered and writhed at the edges of sight, defying form. A low growl resonated, seeming to emanate from the very soil beneath my feet, from the air itself. I pivoted, searching, but saw only the malevolent stillness of the shrine. "Who's there?" My voice was a thin, quavering thread. "Is someone there?" The growl repeated, closer now, accompanied by a phantom sensation of hot, fetid breath against the nape of my neck. I spun again. Empty air. My heart threatened to batter its way free of my ribs. Retreating step by cautious step, I kept my gaze fixed on the periphery where shadows coalesced and dispersed like smoke. "Please," I pleaded to the oppressive silence. "I didn't mean... I'm sorry. Let me leave." A laugh answered, devoid of humor, cold as grave dirt, echoing not in the air but within the confines of my skull. Then, the voice, ancient as mountains, grating like millstones. "Too late, small trespasser." It resonated, bypassing ears entirely. "You stirred the sleep, now comes the reckoning." The ambient shadows thickened, curdling into shapes that defied geometry and reason. Pinpricks of baleful light ignited within the gloom, eyes burning with cold hunger. Tendrils tipped with obsidian sharpness unfurled, reaching. A scream ripped from my throat, raw terror-given voice. I ran. Direction ceased to matter. Only escape from the encroaching nightmare mattered. They pursued, those things born of shadow and malice. Yet the clearing stretched, mocking my flight, the shrine remaining stubbornly central no matter how I fled. Time dissolved into a blur of panicked motion and burning lungs. Minutes stretched into eternities, or perhaps seconds. Exhaustion clawed at me, threatening to drag me down, but the certainty of what waited should I falter kept my legs churning. Just as collapse seemed inevitable, a fissure appeared in the oppressive wall of trees, a glimpse of ordinary woods beyond the unnatural twilight. Hope, sharp and desperate, surged. I threw myself towards it. For an agonizing instant, I felt the feathery brush of claws against my jacket, the chilling proximity of that same foul breath, and then release. I burst through, tumbling head over heels down a slope carpeted in mundane leaves. The impact stole my breath. I lay sprawled, gulping air, limbs trembling, too terrified to even look. Gradually, the familiar symphony of the woods seeped back into my awareness. Wind sifting through leaves, the far-off cry of a jay. Tentatively, I cracked open my eyes. I was at the base of a gentle incline, nestled amongst reassuringly normal trees. Sunset painted the sky in strokes of fire and rose. No clearing, no altar, no horrors. With aching slowness, I hauled myself upright. My clothes were shredded, skin laced with scratches and blooming bruises. Alive, free, or was I? A sudden, visceral coldness traced my spine. My gaze snagged on something through the intervening trunks. A flicker, a hint of the worked stone where only wood and leaf should be. An altar, ringed by totems. My heart froze. The awful certainty crashed down. I hadn't escaped. Not truly. The locust and the archaic blight I'd disturbed hadn't let go. It was there, waiting, watching, and it wanted me. Raw panic lent wings to my feet. I fled, faster than I thought possible, not daring to look back, not stopping until the blessed sight of my sedan appeared at the distant trailhead. Driving away, asphalt blurring beneath the wheels, hands slick with sweat on the steering wheel. The unshakable sensation of being pursued clung to me like a shroud. In the ensuing days, I erected walls of rationalization. Exhaustion, perhaps dehydration, a waking nightmare born of isolation. But the facade crumbled in the quiet hours when twilight seeped under the door and silence pressed close. In those moments, as I felt it, that vast, cold awareness, observing from just outside the periphery of the mundane world, I carry the knowledge now like a stone in my gut. There is no real escape from what I woke in that forgotten grove. It persists, patient as eternity, waiting for a moment of weakness, a thinning of the veil, and it will reach for me again. A single careless touch born of curiosity, an intrusion upon secrets best left buried, has irrevocably bound my destiny to its hunger. The relic in the woods may lie hidden again, but the darkness it holds is awake, and it remembers my name, Ilara. It waits. At the alchemist's mug, they call me the mind reader behind the mahogany bar, the one who slides their usual across the polished wood before a word is uttered. It's a knack, really, a symphony of habits. Silas, punctual as tide turn, needs his amber ale precisely at 5. Thursdays belong to Clara's bone dry martini. Olive skewered, just so. Finn transitions from black coffee to the sparkle of soda water once the clock chimes 8. This delicate dance of predictability, it's my compass, my shield. Which is precisely why the stark white van, parked like a dissonant note across the street, tightens a knot of dread in my chest. Its first appearance, a smudge against the familiar brickwork 3 weeks past, coincided with my afternoon shift. The driver, nondescript beneath a faded baseball cap, ambled in. His inquiry aimed at my little blue Echo, parked out back, claimed an identical model, fretted over the transmission, innocuous, a fleeting exchange. Or so I thought. 48 hours later, the van materialized again, miles away, stark against the supermarket asphalt. Same vehicle, same man emerging. The question now about the steering column, a manufactured casualness clinging to him like cheap cologne. A chill traced my spine as he fell into step beside my rattling cart. His smile stretched thin. "Fancy meeting you," he'd murmured, his voice too close. I offered clipped responses, broadcast in disinterest like a lighthouse beam. Yet he shadowed me, a persistent drone of automotive chatter right to my Echo's tailgate. He loomed, a breath too near as I loaded bags until another shopper's passage finally made him recoil, retreating to his metal shell with a wave that churned my insides. The following week became a grim game of hide and seek I hadn't agreed to play. The van, a ghost haunting the periphery, materialized outside my gym, then shadowed the cafe where Maya and I shared Sunday solace, finally anchoring itself in the sprawling lot of the Crosstown Cinema. Each encounter unfolded with the same unnerving script. The approach, the feigned car talk, the way he lingered, violating the air around me. I scrambled my schedule, weaving new paths to work, swapping grocery aisles, altering workout times, desperate measures against an unseen current. It made no difference. The white panel would bloom in my rearview mirror, a predator patient in the urban jungle, or lie in wait at my destination. A chilling testament to his uncanny foresight. He seemed to anticipate my movements before the thoughts even fully formed in my own mind. Tonight at Deviation, a private affair, bartending a milestone birthday in the quiet sprawl of the suburbs. Good pay, familiar territory. Yet rounding the final corner onto the tree-lined street, my breath hitched, snagged sharp in my throat. There, half a block down, stark under the sodium lamps, sat the white van. My pulse hammered against my ribs, fingers trembling as I fumbled with my phone, tapping out a frantic message to Maya. White van. Here, at the private gig. How? Her reply flashed back immediate, imperative. Stay locked inside. Call 911. Now. Before the numbers connected, a sharp rap on the driver's side glass made me flinch violently, phone nearly tumbling from my grasp. But it was only Beatrice, the evening's host, smiling warmly, ready to help me unload. Emerging on shaky legs, the words tumbled out. The van, the man, the relentless pursuit. Beatrice's welcoming expression dissolved, replaced by a dawning, troubled recognition. That thing, she murmured, eyes narrowing towards the vehicle. It's been sitting there since noon. Assumed it was for the Johnson's carpets next door, but their crew packed up hours ago. Urgency replaced pleasantries. We hustled my gear into her garage, her hand already reaching for her own phone, insisting on involving the authorities. While we waited, Beatrice, a sudden whirlwind of protective energy, marshaled her husband, Arthur, and a handful of early arrivals, forming a small phalanx to escort me indoors. From the living room window, a fortress of glass and flickering candlelight, I saw movement within the van, a silhouette shifting, watching. Then, the reassuring flash of blue and red lights painted the quiet street. Two officers materialized, their calm professionalism a stark contrast to the frantic pounding in my chest. They approached the van. The driver emerged, hands slicing the air in agitated explanation, his face flushed even from this distance. One officer peeled away, coming towards her house, notepad ready, while the other remained with the man. I recounted the saga, every unnerving encounter, every location, the relentless, bizarre fixation on my Echo. The officer listened, her expression hardening with each detail. Remain inside, she instructed, her voice firm. We'll be having a thorough conversation with our friend. She paused at the door, turning back. And miss, it might be wise to have your vehicle inspected. Individuals like this, They sometimes utilized tracking devices. A cold wave washed over me, stealing my breath. The car questions, not idle chatter, reconnaissance, opportunity. Beatrice, without hesitation, began cancelling her own celebration, quiet apologies tapped out on her phone. Arthur, revealing a background in mechanics, immediately offered to examine my car, right there under the porch light. As he slid beneath the chassis, flashlight beam cutting the darkness, I stood numbly, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, watching the uniformed figures still engaged with the driver. "Got it," Arthur's voice echoed, muffled from under the car. The officer taking my statement moved quickly. Moments later, she held up a small dark object, carefully sealing it in an evidence bag. The subsequent hours dissolved into a haze of official forms and hushed conversations. The man from the van was escorted away, his departure leaving a vacuum on the quiet street. Inside his vehicle, they discovered a nest of surveillance tools, more trackers, unsettling photographs documenting the cars of other women. He was, a detective later explained, a phantom who drifted between states, a predator with a history, adept at skirting the edges of the law, leaving whispers of fear in his wake. Until tonight. In the days that followed, every anonymous white van became a potential threat. Every shadow held a phantom menace. The Alchemist's mug fortified the employee lot with unblinking camera eyes. Maya pressed a shrieking personal alarm into my palm. Beatrice and Arthur became my unofficial, unwavering escort service after every off-site gig. An idea sparked, took root. Self-defense sessions held in the quiet Sunday afternoons at the mug. Women converged, drawn by shared vulnerability, transforming fear into focused empowerment, sharing whispers of near misses, some involving the same white van. My life's rhythm, once shattered, began to reassemble, but with a new cadence. Randomness replaced routine. I became a creature of unpredictable routes, favoring brightly lit parking spots, performing ritualistic checks of my echo. Some might label it paranoia. I called it vigilance. The alchemy of the Alchemist's mug remains unchanged in one respect. I still anticipate the regular's desires, the familiar comfort of the chosen spirits. Yet, my gaze now catches different patterns, subtler, more insidious. The customer whose attention lingers uncomfortably, the one probing with too personal inquiries, the eyes that track the waitresses with unnerving focus. And I'm not the only one seeing it. An unspoken network has formed among the patrons, a collective awareness, quiet nods exchanged across the room. Just last week, a young woman entered, visibly trembling, recounting a harrowing tale of being followed. Before her story fully unfolded, Silas was on his feet offering an escort. Finn was dealing a contact at the precinct, and Clara was pulling up a chair beside her. We guard each other now. Occasionally, the sight of a plain white van in traffic sends a jolt through me, an echo of fear. But it's quickly tempered by the knowledge that I am no longer isolated in my vigilance. A web of support surrounds me, strands of shared experience woven into strength. We transformed a narrative of terror into a testament of solidarity, and that, I find, is a pattern worth cultivating. Static ghosts wrestled across the monitor before resolving into the sterile vista of Corridor 7G, awash in the jaundiced glow of overhead fluorescence. I hunched closer, the security office a pocket of near absolute darkness around me, my reflection a faint spectre on the screen. Then movement, a flicker, a disturbance in the stagnant air, a silhouette melting into the deeper shadows at the corridor's end. Gone. My pulse gave a startled leap against my ribs. This monolithic structure was supposed to be my solitary domain tonight. Julian Croft. That's the name stitched on the uniform. For 6 months, the night shift at Cygnus Dynamics had been my peculiar rhythm. A towering edifice of glass and steel marooned on the city's fringe, it became a sepulchre after 5 p.m. The silence broken only by the building's own quiet respiration. Usually the greatest adversary was the leaden weight of approaching dawn. Not tonight. Tonight, the silence felt brittle, charged. My fingers danced across the console, cycling through the feeds. Ground floor lobbies, vacant. Service stairwells, empty shafts of concrete. Then, the penthouse level. The executive eyrie. There it was again. A definite shape, fluid and fast, weaving between the skeletal frames of cubicles. A wraith deliberately shunning the camera's gaze. Logic screamed protocol. Dial the authorities. Yet, a deeper, more insistent current pulled me elsewhere. Call it morbid fascination. Call it an intuition that this transcended mere trespassing. Whatever the impulse, my hand closed around the cool plastic of the master key card. The key to the forbidden upper strata. The ascent in the elevator capsule felt glacial, each floor number illuminating with agonizing slowness, while my mind spun frantic tapestries of possibility. Burglar, vengeful ex-employee, something altogether less definable? A soft chime, unnaturally loud in the profound quiet, announced my arrival as the doors whispered open. I stepped onto the plush carpeting, flashlight beam slicing ahead, a solitary blade against the gloom. The executive floor unfolded like a high-tech labyrinth. Partitioned workstations, glass-walled offices showcasing opulent desks and the dormant eyes of expensive machines. I advanced with measured steps, senses straining, catching only the low thrum of networked hardware and the frantic drumming within my own chest. Until, drifting from my left, a distinct rhythmic tapping broke the stillness. Type in. Edging around a bank of servers, I froze. Illuminated by the cold, azure radiance of a laptop screen sat a woman. Her face, etched with fatigue and something akin to panic, was familiar from the digital company roster. Anya Sharma, a senior architect in software development. Ms. Sharma. The name left my lips, thin and unsteady. She jolted, spinning around, eyes wide, a complex mixture of alarm and... was that culpability? Who are you? She breathed, her hand instinctively moving to shield the laptop's display. I brought the flashlight beam up to my chest, illuminating the Cygnus Dynamics security patch. Julian Croft, Night Security. A beat. It's exceptionally late. What are you doing here? Anya's posture sagged, a momentary surrender before resolve snapped her upright again, her gaze hardening. Discovering things, she stated, her voice low but resonant. Things you now need to witness. Hesitant, a knot of apprehension tightening in my gut. I approached. Anya flipped the laptop open once more, displaying cascades of alphanumeric characters, a language utterly foreign to me. Cygnus Dynamics, she began, her tone urgent, conspiratorial, is not the enterprise you imagine. The software we're crafting, it's far beyond simple market analytics. It's surveillance architecture, unprecedented in scope, terrifying in its potential. I processed slowly, the sterile office air suddenly feeling thick. Surveillance, meaning what exactly? Anya inhaled sharply, meaning total information awareness. It aggregates everything. Social media footprints, CCTV networks, financial trails, communication intercepts, synthesizing it all instantly. And its clientele. She paused, letting the weight settle. Governments, shadowy conglomerates, anyone with the capital to purchase absolute oversight. The revelation struck with physical force. If her words held truth, this wasn't just corporate malfeasance. It was seismic. The kind of secret that destabilizes nations, shatters empires. Why involve me? I managed, my throat dry. Her eyes locked onto mine. Fear flickered there, undeniable, yet beneath it lay a core of unyielding conviction. Because I possess the proof, but extracting it, exposing it, I cannot manage this alone. If they realize what I've done, the unspoken threat hung heavy between us. The fate of whistleblowers in this rarefied corporate atmosphere was notoriously grim. Every rational instinct urged retreat, urged ignorance. Walk away, Julian. Forget you saw anything. But the raw desperation mingling with fierce determination in Anya Sharma's gaze anchored me. A slow nod. What do you require? The ensuing hour became a crash course in corporate subterfuge. Anya unveiled the hidden server farms nestled deep in the building's sub-basement. Deciphered encrypted communications masked as mundane inter-office memos. Traced the labyrinthine paths of laundered funds flowing into offshore havens. As the minutes bled away, I felt myself submerged, drawn into a vortex of espionage and shadowy power, place far removed from my mundane patrol route. It felt ripped from cinema, yet the danger radiating from the glowing screen was chillingly real. We were so immersed, so focused, that the soft ding from the elevator banks down the hall initially failed to register. Anya's head snapped up, her face instantly bloodless. "They know," she whispered, the words barely audible. No explanation was needed for who they might be. In a fluid motion, the laptop snapped shut. We scrambled for cover, melting behind a partition dividing two workstations. Peering cautiously over the edge, I saw them. Two figures emerging from the elevator, impeccably tailored suits failing to conceal the hard lines beneath their jackets. Professionals. "We have to move, now," I hissed. Anya nodded, her fingers white-knuckled around a diminutive flash drive, the digital heart of our perilous discovery. We began a stealthy retreat towards the emergency exit at the floor's far end, hugging the shadows. Behind us, measured footsteps advanced, their voices low, menacing murmurs echoing in the cavernous space. "Anya, we know you're still here," one voice called out, deceptively calm. "Don't make this difficult. There's no scenario where you walk away from this." In the darkness, Anya's hand found mine, a desperate, trembling grip. Yet her whispered words were steady. "We have to get this out, Julian. People deserve to know." Proximity to the stairwell door bred carelessness. My foot caught the edge of an unseen waste bin. It skittered across the polished floor, the clatter exploding like ordnance in the stillness. "There!" A sharp command. Heavy footfalls pounded in our direction. "Run!" I shoved Anya towards the stairwell door. Wrenching it open, we plunged through, descending the concrete steps in a frantic, stumbling cadence, 2 at a time. Pursuit echoed from above, the sharp clack of expensive shoes on metal treads closing the distance. My brain worked feverishly. The lobby was a death trap. They'd anticipate that. But maybe... "This floor," I gasped, yanking Anya through the fire door marked Level 3. Building schematics flashed in my mind. A fire escape, exterior access leading down to the service alley. We raced through another darkened office landscape, the shouts of the men behind us growing louder, closer. Then, relief surged. The window, the metal ladder clinging to the building's exterior. My fingers, slick with sweat, fumbled with a stubborn latch. Just as the office door crashed open behind us, the window swung outward into the night air. "Go, go," I urged, boosting Anya through the opening. I scrambled after her, slamming the window shut as we emerged onto the cold, vibrating metal platform. The fire escape groaned under our combined weight. Above, curses rained down as our pursuers registered our escape route. A sharp crack split the night. A gunshot, the bullet whining off the railing inches from my head. We hit the uneven pavement of the alleyway. At a dead run, Anya clutching the flash drive as if it were a sacred relic. Which, perhaps, it was. Behind us, the heavy tread of feet descending the metal stairs spurred us onward. "My car, this way," Anya panted, veering around the building's corner. Seconds later, we were inside, doors slamming, engine roaring to life. Cygnus Dynamics receded behind us, its illuminated spire shrinking in the rear-view mirror as the city lights smeared past. The adrenaline began its slow ebb, leaving behind the stark, chilling reality. We were fugitives. We held knowledge powerful entities would employ lethal force to suppress. What now? My voice was a ragged whisper. Anya's gaze remained fixed on the road ahead, her knuckles stark white against the steering wheel. We disseminate. I have a contact, a journalist I trust implicitly. If we can just reach them with this. I nodded, the unspoken implications clear. This wasn't the end. It was merely the frantic opening act. But we possessed a weapon now. A sliver of damning truth with the potential to ignite a firestorm. driving into the encroaching dawn, away from the city and its hidden corruptions. The magnitude of the night's transformation washed over me. From sentinel of the quiet hours to unwilling conspirator in a high-stakes game of exposure. The future was a terrifying blank, uncertain whether we'd be lauded as heroes or erased as inconvenient footnotes. Yet, one certainty resonated deep within. The path back to my former existence was irrevocably closed. Not after tonight. Not after glimpsing the abyss. As the first fragile rays of morning painted the horizon, a silent promise formed within me. Whatever lay ahead, whatever trials awaited, I would follow this through. The truth demanded its reckoning, and fate, it seemed, had drafted us as its unlikely champions. The night shift at Cygnus Dynamics had concluded, but the real vigil, that was only just commencing. I never anticipated that a simple research expedition, one among many, could fundamentally alter my perception of reality. My journey had taken me to a region steeped in whispers of ancient tribal legacies, seeking material for a monograph on indigenous customs. Tales of peculiar rites circulated naturally, but I'd always relegated them to the realm of folklore, the embellished narratives of isolated communities. Then, I unearthed the artifact. It lay sequestered within a plain storage coffer, tucked away in the deep shadows of a back room belonging to the settlement I was documenting. Unremarkable, almost crude, it presented itself, rough-hewn wood, bordered by simple, shallow carvings. A distinct patina on the inner surface spoke of countless instances where a human face had pressed against it. Lifting it, a strange tension resonated up my arms. A faint, telluric scent arose, reminiscent of aged leather and perpetually damp earth. The decision formed swiftly. I would convey it to my quarters for meticulous scrutiny. My name is Elias Thorne, an anthropologist by trade, accustomed to the solitary rigors of fieldwork in remote territories. These excursions are my lifeblood, despite the inherent loneliness. This particular trip commenced unexceptionally. Arrival at the settlement, introductions proffered to the Council of Elders, my academic purpose articulated, the study of local traditions. They presented woven baskets, rudimentary tools, diminutive carvings. The mask, however, remained unmentioned. Its discovery was pure serendipity. Left unattended in a dust-laden repository while the elders retrieved other requested items, I noticed the coffer. It wasn't secured, merely positioned near a wall webbed with plaster cracks. Curiosity, that academic impulse, prompted me to lift the lid. Amidst bundled cloths and small enigmatic totems lay the mask. An inexplicable magnetism drew me to it. The precise reason I reached for it remains elusive, yet grasp it I did. And in that instant, the trajectory of my existence shifted. Back within the confines of my modest room, adjacent to a communal cooking space, redolent of stale oil and aging timber, I placed the mask upon the narrow table near the corner. My field bag rested on the simple cot. Seating myself on the bed's edge, I retrieved my notebook. I inscribed preliminary observations, the mask's morphology, the directness of the carved human figures encircling its perimeter, each possessing disproportionately large circular eyes. The primary surface felt uneven, suggesting either haste or inadequate tools on the part of its creator. A subtle quickening of my pulse accompanied this examination. The object possessed an undeniable presence commanding my attention. Later, under the cloak of night, the impulse struck me to don the mask. A foolish notion, I conceded. I'm not a man given to superstition. Yet an insistent curiosity compelled me. The wood met my skin with a surprising coolness. Slipping it over my face, I secured a worn strap behind my head. A mild pressure asserted itself around my temples. For several heartbeats, I simply stood, breathing the confined air of the room. Initially, nothing transformed. My lodging remained stubbornly familiar. Then, a flicker, peripheral, ephemeral, gone as swiftly as it appeared. Fatigue, I reasoned. Removing the mask, I rubbed my face, the impression of the wood lingering. I left it resting on the table, extinguished the light, and sought rest. Sleep proved evasive. Around the third hour past midnight, a sound intruded, a soft shuffling just beyond my window, like desiccated leaves skittering across concrete. Rising, I activated the overhead bulb, peered outside. The night was utterly still. I dismissed it, yet a tightness constricted my chest. Morning arrived with heavy eyelids and a persistent, dull ache behind my temples. Following a sparse breakfast, I returned to the table, intending to augment my notes on the artifact. Impulsively, I fitted the mask on once more. This time, I endeavored a systematic scan of the room. As my gaze swept towards the door, a distortion materialized in the air. Not quite a ripple, I hesitate to employ metaphor. Simply a transparent, wavering shape. Breath hitched in my throat. My stare remained fixed. The form undulated slightly, then blinked out of existence. I tore the mask off, my pulse a frantic drum against my ribs. A minute passed before a semblance of composure returned. The urge to verify, to look again, warred with a profound wave of apprehension. I resolved to conduct controlled trials. Waiting until mid-afternoon, when sunlight slanted brightly, I drew the curtains partially, muting the room's illumination. Then, the mask went on. Slowly, deliberately, I surveyed my surroundings. Nothing anomalous at first. Then, turning left, I saw it. A figure, partially translucent, standing at the foot of my cot, oriented towards me. Humanoid in general structure, yet devoid of discernible features. I froze, a tremor beginning in my hands. The fine hairs on my forearms prickled upright. An attempt to speak yielded only silence. The entity remained motionless. Sweat beaded on my forehead. My fingers fumbled for the strap. Before I could dislodge the mask, the figure shifted what I perceived to be its head. It turned sideways and vanished. I lowered the mask to the table, backing away, breath coming in ragged gasps, nearly stumbling. Sliding down the wall, I sat on the floor, eyes locked on the inert wooden face. My chest felt banded with iron. My mouth was parched. Never, in all my travels and studies, had I encountered anything remotely similar. Shock reverberated through me, yet beneath it stirred a fierce need for answers. Courage felt distant, elusive. My mind raised a storm of questions. What are they? Why does the mask alone reveal them? How pervasive is their presence? For an immeasurable time, I remained there, contemplating the mask. That evening, compelled by a need for open air and perspective, I secreted the mask in my bag and ventured into the settlement. The main thoroughfare, a track of packed earth, saw sparse activity as residents concluded their daily routines. Sunset bled across the sky. The atmosphere felt thick, my shirt clinging damply to my back. I sought confirmation. Did these entities manifest outdoors? Locating a discreet vantage near a cluster of small wooden dwellings, a narrow alleyway bordered by a dilapidated fence, I risked another look. Slipping the mask on, I cast quick, furtive glances. The familiar sight of the weathered fence met my eyes initially. Then, near a stack of empty crates, two shapes shimmered into view. Positioned near one another, a knot tightened in my stomach. My breathing grew shallow, rapid. They stood facing each other, then unnervingly both turned towards me. No recognizable faces presented themselves, yet the distinct sensation of being observed, directly targeted, washed over me. Maintaining composure required immense effort. Were they hostile? Tentatively, I took a single step forward. The figures held their ground, yet radiated an intensified alertness. Weakness flooded my knees. My palms grew slick with sweat. They weren't merely present, they perceived my observation. It felt like an imminent confrontation. Averting my gaze for a mere second, I looked back. They were gone. I removed the mask, returned it to my bag, and retreated to my room. The subsequent days became a blur of self-assessment and furtive experimentation. Was I experiencing hallucinations? I performed rudimentary physical checks. Temperature normal, pupils reactive. Every detail, every fleeting perception found its way into my notebook. I varied the locations, donning the mask in the communal kitchen, the dusty storage room where it was found, the weathered porch outside my quarters. Each instance yielded sightings, always proximate to objects, tables, corners, doorways, as if utilizing the mundane architecture for concealment. They navigated the physical environment conventionally, never phasing through walls, yet remained utterly invisible to normative sight. Sometimes solitary, sometimes in pairs. Once I observed four congregated near a banana tree, just beyond the settlement's edge. The familiar thoracic constriction accompanied every sighting. Acclimation never occurred. Eating became difficult, sleep a fractured state. A perpetual hypervigilance set in, the dread that donning the mask would reveal them staring back, ever closer. I strove for objectivity, recording concrete details, their lack of color, merely faint, shimmering outlines. Variable stature, some approximating my own height, others shorter, taller. Limbs analogous to human arms and legs, yet torsos possessing a peculiar narrowness. Auditory perception yielded nothing. No footfalls, no respiration. I kept the mask concealed, fearing my increasingly agitated demeanor would attract unwelcome attention. A deeper anxiety surfaced. Perhaps these entities resented observation. Yet, the relentless engine of curiosity drove me onward. One afternoon, I walked beyond the settlement perimeter towards a clearing adjacent to a dense thicket. My aim: to ascertain their presence away from human habitation. A formation of rocks offered partial shade. Mask donned, I scanned the tree line. Minutes stretched. Then between two substantial trunks, a being emerged, gliding rather than walking. It paused, its indistinct head swiveling in my direction. A chill traced my scalp. My own heartbeat thundered in my ears. Sheer will kept me rooted, suppressing the primal urge to flee. After a protracted moment, the figure dissolved back into the dappled light. Gradually, subtle anomalies began to intrude upon my unmasked perception. Fleeting ripples in the ambient air, an inexplicable coolness brushing my skin in still environments. The persistent sensation of a presence just behind me. vanishing upon turning. Gooseflesh erupted without apparent cause. Each time, a subsequent check with the mask confirmed it. At least one entity, observing from a distance. Silent, untouching, yet undeniably aware. Sleep offered no refuge. One night, lying awake under the glare of the lamp, my gaze fixed on the mask resting innocuously on the table, I resolved upon a direct confrontation. Rising, I fitted the mask to my face, then dimmed the light to a low glow. The small room felt suffocatingly close, the air thick and warm. Sweat prickled my skin. For a tense moment, emptiness. Then, in the corner near the door, a single figure materialized. It appeared to be leaning forward slightly. A tingling sensation spread through my fingers. My mouth was utterly dry. I held my position, watching it. It advanced 2 steps towards me. The mask nearly slipped from my grasp. My legs felt unstable, unreliable. I wrenched the artifact from my face, breathing heavily. Looking again, bare-eyed, revealed only empty space. I sank onto the bed, the mask heavy in my trembling hands. The realization struck with chilling force. They were not passive phenomena. They knew I could see them. They were probing, testing boundaries. The thought of them standing mere feet away, unseen, unfelt by ordinary senses, sent a violent shiver through me. What was their intent? A final experiment. My phone's camera. Perhaps digital sensors could capture what the eye alone could not. While wearing the mask, I attempted to record video, panning slowly across the room. The resulting footage showed only my vacant quarters. They remained undetected by technology. Frustration mounted. They possessed a physical reality, yet one that defied conventional means of documentation. The tension became unbearable. My nerves frayed. I'd awaken abruptly, drenched in sweat, convinced something hovered just above me. Whispers of displaced air would caress my face, yet the mask always confirmed solitude, or rather, solitude from visible entities. Doubts surfaced. Was prolonged use of the mask affecting my psyche? Confiding in anyone felt impossible. The settlement elders maintained a guarded demeanor whenever I broached the subject of unusual artifacts. Casually mentioning a peculiar mask to one elder elicited a grave expression. He advised returning anything found that was not intended for me, refused further elaboration, and abruptly departed. My departure felt inevitable. Packing my belongings, I journeyed to a nearby town offering basic accommodation. In the anonymity of a new room, I attempted a full day mask-free. Sleep came easier, yet the insidious tendrils of curiosity persisted. The following evening, I succumbed. Donning the mask, I immediately located an entity high in a corner near the ceiling, pressed flat against the converging walls, almost fused with the structure. My body ceased. For several seconds, movement was impossible. It seemed to watch me intently. Then, it slid downwards, vanishing behind a piece of furniture. Mask off. I felt profoundly shaky. They had followed me. The realization hammered against my ribs. On my final night in that region, I made a decision. The mask was placed within a sturdy wooden crate alongside other collected items, the lid firmly sealed. A futile gesture, perhaps, aimed at containment, but the pervasive sense of being watched lingered unabated. Perhaps they had become attuned to me specifically. Perhaps the mask's influence persisted beyond its immediate use. Uncertainty reigned. It was enough. I resolved to return home, to the city. The sealed crate accompanied me on the aircraft. Sleep eluded me throughout the flight, my mind replaying the unsettling sequence of events, my eyes constantly scanning the cabin, the seats, the aisle, the overhead bins. I resisted the urge to retrieve the mask. Still, my senses remained hyper alert. My apartment, a compact space with a single bedroom opening onto a living area, felt both familiar and alien. The crate found its place in my closet. I attempted immersion in routine, cooking, reading, managing correspondence. Yet, the memory of those translucent figures remained indelible. Some nights, faint shapes flickered at the periphery of my vision. On occasion, I'd find myself standing before the closet, staring at the crate, debating the merits of destroying the mask. I haven't. Whether destruction would prove effective remains unknown. The mask has remained untouched for some time now. Yet, the knowledge persists. I know, with absolute certainty, that were I to put it on again, I would see them, and they, in turn, would see me. They might occupy my living room at this very moment, concealed behind the sofa, lurking in the kitchen's shadows. Unease is my constant companion, yet paradoxically, so is the allure of a discovery that potentially redefines the known world. Sharing this burden feels impossible. Ridicule or psychiatric assessment seem the likely outcomes. Thus, the secret remains mine alone. Sometimes, late at night, I press my ear against the closet door, straining for any sound beyond my own respiration and the refrigerator's low hum. Their nature, their purpose, the mask's mechanism, all remain profound mysteries. I know only their reality and their awareness of me. For now, existence is an exercise in accommodation. Moments arise when the urge to unseal the crate, retrieve the mask, and confront them surges powerfully. But then, the memory surfaces. The vise-like grip on my chest during that last close encounter, the chilling implication of its deliberate advance towards me. I am not prepared for that escalation, not ready to discover their ultimate response to sustained observation. So the mask remains hidden. I practice calming rituals when entering darkened rooms, reminding myself that no physical harm has yet occurred. But every so often, a subtle shift in the air triggers an involuntary scan of the room's corners, searching for a form invisible to my naked eye. My life is irrevocably altered. Their presence is a constant, whether I choose to look or not. That knowledge is my inescapable companion, shadowing me even behind closed eyes. I cannot unsee what I have seen. Peace, I suspect, may forever remain elusive. The old lock yielded with a reluctant snick, and the imposing timber door groaned inward. I swept an arm, gesturing my client into the vastness of the Gothic pile. "After you, Mr. Thorne," I offered, the realtor's smile firmly affixed. Crossing that threshold, I stepped unknowingly from the sunlit pavement into a waiting abyss, a descent that would test the very sinews of my will to live. My name is Ilara Vance, a purveyor of fine properties, my reputation built on closing deals others deemed impossible. From sleek penthouses to ancestral estates, hundreds had passed through my hands. Yet this place, this sepulchral Victorian sentinel on the city's fringe, was different. Years it had languished, a monument to neglect. its price whispering downwards with each failed stewardship. But I perceived the ghost of grandeur within its decay, determined I would be the one to finally broker its passage. Mr. Thorne was the final flicker of hope. He'd materialized from nowhere, his interest piqued by the mansion's notorious history. An aberrant specimen, certainly. Gaunt, tall, with a gimlet gaze that seemed to bore straight through pleasantries, his smile a cold curve that never warmed his eyes. Still, in this fallow market, desperation trumped discernment. The commission beckoned. The foyer received us with a palpable breath of disuse, thick with the scent of dormant secrets. Dust motes pirouetted in the weak shafts of sunlight, piercing the grime-streaked windows. Mr. Thorne inhaled, a drawn-out, almost reverent breath that disturbed the stillness. "Ah, Miss Vance." His voice resonated, strangely amplified in the cavernous space. It exceeds even my expectations. I launched into the practiced narrative, a litany of historical footnotes and architectural quirks, guiding him through room after echoing room. Yet, as we ventured deeper into the house's shadowed heart, a cold premonition began to coil in my gut. Mr. Thorne's inquiries strayed from the conventional. Less the number of bedrooms or the integrity of the ancient plumbing, more the formidable thickness of the walls, the inviolability of the cellar. Descending the Protestant timbers into the lower depths, my discomfort tightened into genuine apprehension. Down here, the air hung heavy, cloying with a subterranean chill. A single naked bulb bled weak light, sculpting more shadow than illumination. And this, I managed, striving for a steady tone, is the wine cellar. Quite substantial, as you can observe. Mr. Thorne trailed long fingers across the rough-hewn stone, a look akin to satisfaction settling on his angular features. Yes, substantial indeed, and the walls, I presume, are quite solid, soundproof perhaps. Ice feathered down my spine. Mr. Thorne, I'm not certain The sharp retort of splintering wood cut through my words. We both spun. The cellar door slammed shut with violent finality. An ominous click echoed, the sound of a lock engaging. A beat of stunned silence hung in the damp air. Then, Mr. Thorne began to laugh. A low, sepulchral rumble that turned my blood to frost. "Oh, Miss Vance," he rasped, turning fully towards me. The thin veneer of civility had vanished, peeled back to reveal a raw, predatory aspect. You cannot fathom the duration of my anticipation for this precise moment. I retreated instinctively, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Mr. Thorne, what is this? Stop this. It isn't amusing." He advanced, slow, deliberate steps, clearly relishing the fear blooming on my face. "Oh, but it is profoundly amusing. You see, I've observed you for weeks, your rhythms, your routines. I knew you would be the ideal instrument to deliver me here, to this perfect sanctuary." My retreat ended abruptly as my back met the unyielding cold of the stone wall. Trapped. The realization hit with suffocating force. Why? The word tore from my throat, ragged. What is it you want? His vulpine smile stretched wider. Why, you, naturally. And this wonderfully sequestered house where the silence will swallow your screams whole. Terror, stark and absolute, surged through me, yet ignited alongside it was a fierce primal insistence on survival. I would not become another cautionary anecdote whispered among novice agents. As he lunged, a predator closing the distance, instinct took over. Years of yoga yielded an unexpected dividend. I twisted, ducking beneath his grasping arm, contorting my body to slip past his lunge. I bolted for the stairs, devouring them two at a time, his curses and the heavy thud of his pursuit echoing behind me. The cellar door. I yanked, rattled, shoved, futilely. It held fast. Panic clawed, threatening to dissolve my resolve, but I beat it back. I knew this house, its labyrinthine layout. Another exit. There had to be. I fled through the kitchen, snatching a weighty cast iron skillet from the stove as I passed. A pathetic shield, perhaps, but better than bare hands. Thorn's footsteps hammered closer, a relentless percussion tracking my flight. I burst into the dining room, eyes darting, desperate for leverage and escape. The immense bay window, glazed with years of neglect, gleamed faintly. My best option? Though it meant abandoning the dubious shelter of the house for the exposed grounds. No time for doubt. Hoisting the skillet, I swung with every ounce of strength I possessed. Glass imploded with a cathartic roar. Without pausing, I hurled myself through the jagged aperture, feeling shards rip at fabric and flesh. I landed hard on the overgrown lawn, the impact expelling the air from my lungs in a painful gasp. Adrenaline surged, a potent chemical tide lifting me to my feet in seconds. I ran, stumbling towards the distant iron gates marking the property's edge. A bellow of incandescent rage erupted behind me. A backward glance risked in terror. Thorn, framed in the shattered window, his face a mask of fury. He vaulted through the opening with an agility that belied his gaunt frame. I pushed harder, lungs searing, the vast expanse of the lawn seeming infinite. The gates materialized slowly, my car a promise of sanctuary just beyond them. Just a little further. A hand clamped around my ankle like a manacle. I crashed down, the damp earth rushing up to meet me. Thorn was upon me instantly, his weight crushing me beneath him, anchoring me to the ground. His hands found my throat, squeezing with brutal force. "You should have acquiesced," he snarled, his face inches from mine, breath hot and foul. Now I must find another playmate. Black constellations bloomed at the edge of my vision as I fought for breath, clawing at his wrists. My free hand scrabbled frantically in the overgrown grass, searching, desperate. Fingers closed around something solid, cold, blessedly heavy. A stone, forgotten remnant of some long-vanished landscaping. Summoning a final reserve of strength, I swung it upwards, connecting solidly with the side of Thorn's head. A guttural grunt escaped him, his vise-like grip loosened fractionally, allowing a precious, ragged gasp of air. I struck again, harder. He rolled off me with a choked cry, clutching his skull. I scrambled upright, swaying, the world tilting violently. But forward momentum propelled me. I staggered towards the gates, fumbling in my pocket, fingers trembling as they sought my keys. Behind me, Thorn was stirring, his curses escalating as he registered my escape. I reached the car just as he surged across the lawn, a figure of relentless menace. My hands shook uncontrollably, betraying me as I tried to stab the key into the lock. "Come on, please, come on," I whimpered, eyes flicking between the recalcitrant lock and the rapidly closing distance. The tumblers finally yielded. I wrenched the door open, flinging myself inside, turning the ignition even as I slammed the door shut. Thorn reached the vehicle as I jammed it into reverse. His fists hammered against the driver's side window. The glass crazed into a spider web, but held. I stomped on the accelerator. Tires screamed protest on the asphalt as I peeled away. In the rearview mirror, his figure diminished, standing impotently in the center of the lane, rage radiating from his shrinking silhouette. His furious shouts dissolved, replaced by the frantic drumming of my own heart against my ribs. I drove for hours, directionless, vibrating with adrenaline, unable to face home nor the sterile procedural calm of the police station. Finally, pulling into the desolate brightness of a 24-hour diner's parking lot, I saw my hands were still shaking violently. I sat, engine idling, the enormity of the ordeal crashing down. Sobs erupted, raw and racking. The release of terror narrowly averted, I had stared into the abyss and somehow, impossibly, clawed my way back. I had survived, fought, won. As the first tentative strokes of dawn painted the eastern sky, a fragile calm settled. I drove to the station. The officers were attentive, their questions methodical as I recounted the nightmare, promising Thorn would be apprehended. In the ensuing days, every shadow seemed to lengthen menacingly, every sudden noise a jolt to my frayed nerves. The career I'd poured my life into now felt laced with potential peril. Each viewing, each new client, a potential echo of Thorn. He remained elusive, a phantom haunting the periphery of my awareness. Yet, slowly, stubbornly, I refused to let fear architect my future. Self-defense classes became a ritual. My home, my car, became fortresses layered with security. I scrutinized potential clients with newfound circumspection, altered my routines. Incrementally, painstakingly, I began to reclaim the geography of my own life. The experience had irrevocably altered me. Of that, there was no doubt. Perhaps not entirely for the worse. A previously unknown stratum of strength had been unearthed within me. I had confronted the embodiment of my deepest fears and emerged, scarred but standing. Now, paused outside a new listing, preparing to greet a prospective buyer, I drew a long, deliberate breath. The fear hadn't vanished. It was a quiet hum beneath the surface now, a permanent resident. But beside it stood an adamantine core, a quiet fortitude. Smoothing my jacket, I composed my features into the familiar mask of professionalism and stepped forward. I was Ilara Vance, survivor, purveyor of properties, ready for whatever the day held.